Welcome to the University of Lincoln's Christmas lecture series from the College of Science. The lectures will take place over this week, with 3 taking place online at 1 p.m. and 1 lecture in person this evening. There is a link in the chat to our website where you can find details of the talks along with joining links and instructions. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Daniel Mills, who will be talking about a pet's view of the world. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you all, and welcome from the University of Lincoln. My name's Daniel Mills, and I'm Professor of Veterinary Behavioural Medicine here at the University of Lincoln, and it's my pleasure to chat to you today about trying to look at Christmas from a pet's perspective. A little bit about me and the work that I do. We run a behaviour service here at Lincoln to help people and their pets when they have problems in their relationship or with their pet's behaviour. And one of the areas of research that I work in concerns, trying to view things from an animal's perspective. I'm going to bring in some of that as well as some other general hints and tips to hopefully make sure that your Christmas goes smoothly for you and your pet as well. So let's make a start, shall we? And I have to start by thanking everybody. I put a message out to a number of friends saying, do you have pictures of your pets I can use for this lecture? And within a couple of hours, I got more than 200 pictures sent in from people. So thank you to everybody who sent pictures to. And I'm not just going to talk about dogs. I'm going to be talking about other species as well. So regardless of what pet you have, you may want to, it may be relevant. And as I said, pets play an important part in our lives. And that's one of the areas that we also look at here. So not only do I have to thank the people who've provided me with pictures, but also all the people who volunteer their pets to take part in the research that we do here. And I have here a number of the pets of some of the clients that we've worked with and that have helped us in some of the research. We do both applied research, but also fundamental research to try to understand the way that animals view the world and how they feel about it. And we couldn't do it without your support. If you're listening to this in the Lincolnshire area and you might be interested in volunteering your pets, then there is a link here that you can sign up your pet. And it's not just, again, cats and dogs. We've got a database for horses and other pets and species as well. So if you're interested and you want to be kept up to date with what we do, then please do sign up here. But the other thing about my research is that it also brings me into contact with a wide range of people. And the picture in the bottom left of your screen is actually of a dog called Chaser. And Chaser is a remarkable dog because he had documented an understanding of over 1,000 words, which is more than a lot of young children have. And his understanding of language has given us new insights into understanding language more generally. And his owner was a guy called Professor Pilley in the States. And through an interest in his work, I've made contact with his daughter since he passed away, and we keep in touch. And understanding people like this and their animals can be invaluable. And I have a great job. Not only do people send me pictures of their pets, but as I said, I get to encounter lots of great individuals who are doing similar work in other parts of the world as well. So my research, as I said, focuses on both the pure and the applied, so understanding emotion in animals, but also understanding behavior problems. But I also work with colleagues from a wide range of disciplines, and that includes in the areas of business as well. And this is not a trivial subject. We might think about pets and think, oh, well, they're just sort of casual. And that has been the attitude. But increasingly, not just in biology, but in other disciplines, people have started to appreciate just how important they are to us. We know that pets help people increase their independence, not just in assistance animals, but generally people feel more confident going out. They can be used in the classroom to improve educational achievements. Pet owners generally report better mental health in a variety of situations, and also they tend to be more active and have better physical health. And working with colleagues here, We've looked at the economic impact of this because this is something that is perhaps not fully recognized, that how important this is to society. So just by looking at the physical health benefits, we estimate that pet ownership in the UK saves the NHS more than £2.5 billion. Now that's important, especially when we're at a time of financial crisis and economic crisis, that actually pet ownership is helping us keep the economy floating and going. And there's a variety of ways that that works, because of the benefits that pets provide, they reduce use on community support services, reduce support services in schools. They can improve their functioning. People can be more effective. Their mental health services and physical health services is reduced. And as I said, if you just look at the physical health aspects and some of the mental health aspects relating to the NHS, the figure comes in at over £2.5 billion. But there's also indirect benefits, because when people are better, they can do more for society. So they are more productive. So that also helps our economy. So this is not just, as I said, a frivolous pastime. Understanding pets is really important. And it's also important to appreciate that actually pets have been part of our society since we've had society. When the first humans settled into societies, they already had domestic dogs with them. So clearly there's something really important about pets in our lives. Now, I'm not saying that they were necessarily pets, the first dogs that were domesticated, but we've shared our lives with them. And we recognize that pets play a number of really important roles for us. They help improve our mood. Often, just a dog looking happy at us can make us feel better. They can provide us with social support, which means we feel more confident in a social situation with them around us. They connect us with nature. There's an idea of what's known as biophilia, which relates to the fact that humans have an intrinsic need to be close to nature. And if we live in urban areas, we can get divorced from that, and that can put a strain on us. But by having pets in our lives, we remain connected, and that might help us with our health as well. They help to create social norms and also build little communities around it. So if you go out riding or you walk your dog, you may go with like-minded people, and that can be really important for us as well. I've mentioned they increase the exercise, and they provide learning opportunities as well. And as I say, social networks can be shared. So the bottom picture here, people share pictures of their pets on their phones, and that helps to build communities. It stops people being lonely. And just touching animals can be good for us as well, that need for physical touch. So all of these things can be quite important when we start to think about the role that pets play to us. And it's not a question that they do one or other function. They actually fulfill many of these functions simultaneously for us, and they often do it in a way that perhaps hasn't been well appreciated, and it's only now we're beginning to scratch the surface of this. And we've done research at Lincoln looking at exactly what it means to own a dog. When people do surveys of pets and human health, they often ask, are you a dog owner? Well, as I said at the beginning, a lot of my work is dealing with people with problem pets. And I can tell you that just owning a dog isn't necessarily good for your health, because if they're problem behaviors, it can take a big toll. So what we've started to do is to start to tease out these different ideas as to how pets can help us in order to work out where the most important benefits are, so that we can perhaps make better use of them within society and improve society as a result. So all of these things are important, and there's a growing recognition of the value of studying companion animals, and I've been very fortunate to have a career based around that. But I want to talk about Christmas, and we all know sort of Christmas is a great time of year. It's when Santa comes, we wrap up presents, we unwrap them, we put up the Christmas tree, put up the Christmas lights. But it can also be exhausting, and it may not be fun for all. So I'm going to go through a few aspects of Christmas and try and look at it from the pet's point of view. So let's look at the Christmas build-up. What happens at Christmas? Well, there'll be changes in environment as we set up the tree and various other things. There will be changes to routine. We may do more or less exercise as we take time off from work, or we have more visitors coming to the house. And some of these changes can be dangerous and some of them can be stressful for pets. And so one of the things that we do in our clinical work is we recommend that everybody sets up what's known as a safe haven for pets. And I'll talk a little bit more about this. But just be aware that, change can be stressful for your pet as well as for yourself. So what do we mean by a safe haven? Well, a safe haven is a place that we set up for the pet where they are in control and no harm will happen to them. Sometimes when an animal is scared, for example, by fireworks, it might run to the cupboard under the stairs, for example. This isn't a safe haven. This is somewhere the dog goes to hoping it will be safe. The difference between what I would call a bolt hole, where an animal runs to hoping it will be safe, compared to a safe haven is somewhere where the dog or cat knows it will be safe. And there's several key features here. And it's easy to set up in advance. So I just want to quickly go through some of the advice so that your pet can go somewhere and take himself or herself off to that area and remain calm throughout the whole of the Christmas festivities. So usually we take something quite distinctive, like a new bed or blanket or something like that, and lay it down. And we lay it in an area that is secluded, that doesn't have any negative associations, but the animal can freely get itself to. You might want to put a few treats there, but there are a few rules to follow. The first is you never force your animal into that space and you never lock it into that space. So they can remain in control of when they want to be there and when they don't want to be there. The second rule is you never impose yourself on that space. So you don't go up to the dog and put his lead on and take him for a walk. You ask him if he wants to go for a walk. And if he comes off the bed or the space, then you can go for a walk. But if he doesn't, he's saying to you, no, I don't fancy it today. And we have to respect that. The third rule is that everybody needs to understand those first two rules. So if there's young children, they have to follow those rules as well. And they shouldn't be left unsupervised. People shouldn't impose themselves on their dog or cat in that area. As I said, this is where the animal is in control. And only ever good things happen in that space. So as I said, leave treats and toys for the dog or cat to find in that space, but don't go up to them and pet them because, again, you're imposing yourself on that space. If you want to have a cuddle with them, ask them if they want to join you. And again, respect their decision. So it becomes a space where they are in control, they know no harm will happen to them, and they can communicate to you what they want and what they don't want. And these are all absolutely key in helping them see it as that safe haven. It's a simple thing to set up. It doesn't take long, and there's time between now and Christmas for you to set up a safe haven in your pet if you can find a suitable location and a clear way to mark it. For the animal. If you use something like a blanket, the beauty of that is if you've trained it to a safe haven, if you go to somebody else's house, you can lay the blanket in a quiet area and they can relax in that space too. So, what about Christmas decorations? Well, we put up the tinsel, the Christmas lights, and have a nice Christmas fire. But these can be quite strange from a pet's perspective. Cats, their vision is particularly sensitive to movement. And so particularly things like tinsel or lights flickering can be really attractive to them. This can get them into trouble. Not only might they pull things down, but they might start to chew on it. A lot of cats like to chew on wires and things like that. And you've got to make sure they don't get electrocuted. And you need to think carefully where you position these things. Likewise, they may chew on the tinsel. If they see it as like the flicker, their brain sort of interprets it as if it's like an insect. Often when animals hunt, we don't sort of actually picture the whole animal. They respond to very simple cues because they've got to act really quickly. So they can take very superficial signs like shimmering light on tinsel as if there's something there and pounce on it. And as I said, they may well chew it. And I'm a vet as well as a research scientist. And sometimes you have to do surgery to remove things like this in the stomach. So be careful where you put your tinsel and your Christmas lights. One of the things you can offer pets to chew on, which can be relatively safe, but don't overdo it, is licorice sticks. And I don't mean the sweet candied ones. I mean the licorice root. You can buy it in sort of traditional pet shops and also online. And that's okay for them to chew on. And you can divert them to chew on things like that. The Christmas fire and the Yule log is another great tradition, but for many people, they don't have a fire much the rest of the year. So make sure you use something like a fire guard to protect your pet. This year, we recently got a new cat, and he's absolutely fascinated by a fire. I don't think he'd ever seen a fire before. He's a rescue cat. We have a wood burner, and we have to keep him away from it because he would burn himself on the hot metal. So just make sure that you have proper guards in place to keep your pets safe if you're going to have a fire, and especially if it's an open fire where sparks could flash out as well, because a cat might see a spark flash out of a fire and jump on it, same way as they sometimes do with laser toys and things like that. That doesn't stop them getting burned on their paws or on their face. So just be careful with them. Another thing we often do at this time of year is we often bring in a number of new plants into the home. So whether it be things like holly or mahonia, they can have sharp points, and that can obviously damage an animal's paws. We also have to be careful that a number of the traditional Christmas plants like mistletoe and holly have poisonous berries. So be careful if you're going to hang up holly and mistletoe. Be careful where it is if it's got berries, and make sure that your pets can't get access to it. Other plants are themselves quite poisonous, so things like ivy, poinsettias, which are those red and green plants you can see with the Labrador in this picture. To his side, there's a poinsettia there. Lilies, whilst very beautiful, their pollen is highly toxic to cats. And if a cat brushes against a lily with the stamens in and then grooms itself, it can actually poison itself. So do be careful if you're going to give gifts of flowers to somebody who's got cats at home. Many florists now will actually remove the stamens for that reason. And cyclamens, another winter flower, is also quite poisonous to pets as well. In general, I would recommend that if you're going to have a tree, because with all those decorations on, it's going to be fascinating, especially if you've got a cat or some other a bird in the house that flies, or if you've got decorations that might smell interesting to a dog. Make sure that you secure your tree properly against a wall so it doesn't fall over and cause an accident. Be very careful about having glass or decorations that can shatter, or ones that are edible. Remember, pets have an incredible sense of smell, so even if it's well wrapped up in several layers, they can still detect it. And it might not be sort of when you're around, but it might be when you're in bed that they decide they're going to go and investigate the Christmas tree and destroy things. And as we'll see, we've got to be careful with some of the foods as well. So not saying, don't do these things. What I'm saying is just be careful with them and be aware that there could be a risk there. So let's look at the Christmas dinner. A lot of people are not aware of some of the things that are toxic to pets. And the top picture, actually, there is a dog underneath the table. I don't know how clearly it comes out to you. But again, some very common foods can be quite highly toxic to pets. So grapes, raisins, and sultanas can all carry a mold on them that can cause kidney failure in dogs. Macadamia nuts, again, can be highly toxic. Certain forms of chocolate, you can get pet chocolate, and that's absolutely fine, but don't be tempted to give them a bit of, some of your chocolate Santa that you've been given, because you could end up with your pet at the vets, or worse still, it could actually kill them if they get too much. If you're making things like sage and onion stuffing, and using shallots or other related plants, you've got to be careful, because onions can be highly toxic to pets. They can cause the red blood cells to actually shatter and result in a form of anemia. Rosemary, sometimes used with lamb at Christmas and also with the turkey. Lovely smelling herb, but again, can be toxic. And also artificial sweeteners like xylitol, which is commonly used in low-calorie products, again, can be highly toxic to many pets, as can some moldy cheeses like blue cheese. So these should not be given to your pets at all, and be wary of that. Remember, dogs evolved as scavengers. Almost certainly one of the things that brought dogs in close connection with humans was some of the sort of waste that they produced. In the early days of our relationship, we didn't have dustmen collecting the rubbish, but rubbish would be just chucked outside a village, and the animals would tend to scavenge it. Well, in the same way, the dog will scavenge if it can smell something in the dustbin, or if it's left unsupervised, it may well steal the carcass, and the bones can cause problems. So just make sure you dispose of things very well. If you are unfortunate enough that your pet has a tummy upset, then you need to think very carefully about the reason for it. Is it that perhaps it's eaten too much, or there's been a change in the diet, or has it actually been poisoned? This is a time of year when many pets can get poisoned. So do check the ingredients of what they've eaten. And as a general rule, try to avoid giving human food to your pets over Christmas. It's the safest way to do it. And when we think about the Christmas dinner, just bear in mind that our pet's view of the world is very different to ours. So in the pictures that I've just projected, the top one is a human view of walking into a room. We see the world with slightly different colors, but we also see it from a different height. If you look at that top picture, you can see on the corner of the table, there's a plate actually full of tomatoes. If you were a cat, your view would be quite different. Not only do the colors change, you'll notice how the pink feather on the toy has disappeared because cats don't see the red, and so those sorts of colors get bleached out. Cats are also much more sensitive to light, and that's why their eyes shine when we shine a light on them. So everything appears much brighter. But you can see from a cat's perspective, they have no idea what's on the table. The only way for them to find out is to jump on the table. And that's why cats are so curious. They're often investigating what we can see, but they might not be able to see. Cats also love to investigate the way that things move. If you've ever seen a cat playing with prey, it's investigating and looking at the way that things move as a result of being prodded. And that can apply to ornaments as well. So be careful on that account as well. There'll be Christmas parties. One of the things from our clinical work that we've started to think about is how difficult it is for pets, and particularly dogs, to understand raised voices. We know from our own research and the research of others that dogs are very sensitive to the emotions, and they use a whole variety of cues in order to understand the emotions of others. And they integrate this, and dogs seem to read emotion more perhaps than somebody's intention. So how you're feeling, and this is one of the things that makes them such great companions. So if in a party there are raised voices, dogs find that very difficult to understand. They can hear the intensity of the noise, but they may not pick up on the emotion of the situation, and this can cause tension for them and may result in a dispute. If there is a Christmas argument, then that can be particularly troubling because they will pick up on the angry tones, but the angry tones around them, but you're the person that they really love, and that can be really confusing. And as I said, it can result in disturbances. It can result in a dog, for example, biting one of the people involved in an argument, or perhaps redirecting that aggression to one of the other animals in the home. So just be aware with raised voices, even if they're happy voices in a party, it may be very confusing and difficult for dogs to actually interpret. The other thing that goes with Christmas parties quite often are party poppers, crackers, and fireworks. Now, in crackers, you may also have toys falling out, and obviously a dog or a cat may pick up on that and chew it. And you've got to be careful in those situations as well to just make sure that they don't scavenge it. So if something does fall on the floor out of a party hat, make sure you pick it up. You don't really want to have a foreign body inside your dog's stomach later on. But many dogs and cats and horses as well, but horses won't be in your home, will react to things like party poppers, crackers, and fireworks. So if there are fireworks going on in your area, make sure that your horse is safe, but also your pet's at home. In the home, as I said, if you're going to use party poppers or crackers and fireworks, just take note of your pet and how they respond. They may develop a worried look like this dog here, and we need to make sure that they're safe and well. And this is where not only a safe haven can be useful, but also knowing how to respond to your pet appropriately. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a program that we've developed here at Lincoln called the Sensitive Carer. So the Sensitive Carer approach is a program that we've developed to try and help people respond appropriately. When you read online about how to respond to a scared pet, then often you'll see various bits of advice which can be confusing. And I just want to go through this. As I said, the first thing to do is, if possible, make sure they have a safe haven or a quiet back room if you're going to a party. But if your pet is scared, and the ideas for this actually come from work in the human field on what makes a good carer in child development. And this has really important implications for not just dealing with an immediate fright, but also in the case of young animals, can really set the tone for the relationship. First thing I would say is, don't tell your pet off for being scared. Don't say, oh, don't be so stupid, because your tone of voice indicates that you're angry. Now the pet has something to be scared of. Whenever this pop goes or these fireworks go off, not only do I find it scary, but my owner starts to get angry with me, and that will make matters worse. Likewise, you shouldn't try to console your pet. As I said earlier, one of the things that we've found is that dogs are particularly good at reading human emotion but they interpret it from a dog's point of view, not a human point of view. So while you might be trying to reassure your pet by saying, everything's all right, everything's okay, the dog will pick up on that emotion, that softness. And often when people try to console their pets, they snuggle up to them. Now, from a dog's point of view, what they see is a person speaking in a soft way, making themselves small. That's usually a sign that they're scared. So that doesn't give them much confidence. And whilst the owner thinks that they're helping their pet, they can actually be making matters worse. Because from the dog's point of view, not only did the bang scare them, but it also seemed to scare their owner. But the owner thinks they're actually helping their pet. Nor should you ignore your pet. Pretend nothing has happened. You'll sometimes see people say this, but that doesn't give the dog the social support that it needs. There's no recognition, if you ignore your pet, that there is a problem there. So the sensitive carer approach says you need to acknowledge your pet's concern. So you stop what you're doing if there's something scary, and you turn towards your pet, and you see that he's scared, and you say, oh, what was that? So you communicate with them, making eye contact. Dogs are particularly sensitive to eye contact, and you're acknowledging that they were scared. But if you say it in that upbeat tone, sort of, what was that? That sort of thing, then you've acknowledged them, but you're also starting to show that there is nothing to be worried about. Now, sometimes people say, oh, try and get your pet to play. But if a dog is scared, the last thing he wants is a toy shoved in his face. What we have to do is we have to show through our own behavior that everything is safe, and the dog will read that emotion and then choose to engage. And that's how we change the mood. So, for example, we might suggest that in this situation that you have some of the dog's toys and you start to play with the toys. You look at the toys. You don't look at the dog. You start to take, let's say, 2 or 3 toys, and you practice your juggling. And hopefully you're a bad juggler, so you drop them. And people in the house might have a laugh at your inability to juggle, but there becomes this much more positive environment. And that tells the animal that actually this is a safe place to be. You have acknowledged that they're scared, but you're showing through your behavior that everything is safe and there's nothing to be worried about. So your pet changes their own mood, and you can reward that. So when they then choose to come to you because they can see that you're having fun, that's where you pause, acknowledge them again, and say, oh, you want to play with me? That's great. And you play with them a little bit. And that way you can help them get over the fear in that situation. So, some of the research that we do is taken from the human side of things as well. We can use humans as models for better understanding our pets as well. What about Christmas presents and games? Well, be careful of some of the wrappings. Sometimes, paper wrapping isn't really going to harm a dog, but some of the wrappings can get stuck, and especially if they eat too much. So Wrapping and unwrapping can be fun, but make sure they don't eat too much of it. And be careful of things like strings and ribbons, because they can be swallowed and they can cause the gut to actually concertina up and cause quite serious problems, especially if they've got like a bow at one end and that gets caught, and that can cause a very serious problem in the animal's gut later on. But Christmas gifts can be a great opportunity for providing enrichment. They should be appropriate. So if you've got rabbits, give them carrots. That's much better. If you want to give your dogs chocolates, make sure it's proper pet chocolate that you're giving them. But you can also make the whole unwrapping process an enrichment. If you see that the dogs in the second picture from the left in this slide, then these dogs are all on weight. They've all been trained to, and they'll be instructed to go to individual presents that they can unwrap. Each one has a special gift for the dog. So you can use it as a training exercise and providing enrichment for them, and it will strengthen your relationship. So it can be a lot of fun, great opportunities for them. One thing to be very wary of is if you're going to have a snow globe in the house. Actually, after I announced that I was going to be doing this lecture and I asked my friends if they had any pictures, one of them contacted me and sent me a link to a very sad story of somebody whose 2 dogs died because one of them knocked off a snow globe off the shelf and they licked up the liquid. Snow globes, the liquid that is in them quite often is a form of antifreeze. And antifreeze is very, very toxic. If by any chance your dog does get hold of something like a snow globe and the liquid in it, or hold of antifreeze, and we'll come back to that in the next slide, please get them to the vet immediately. If you leave it a day, it's probably too late and they may well die. So do be very, very careful. So beware of those situations. Other liquids in some other toys might also use antifreeze as well, so just be cautious on that basis. So the Christmas weather, well, you don't need me to tell you that it can be cold at Christmas. I'm sure you're all in a cold snap as well, but we need to be sensitive to how our pets see it. Yes, dogs can cope with very low temperatures, but sometimes the way that we've bred them and the way that they are, it can be difficult for them. And likewise for cats, they may not want to go out. So if you've got a cat that normally goes out, it might be that in the cold weather, he doesn't want to go out as much. And you need to make sure then that his litter box is cleaned more often, because otherwise he might start going in the house because he's already peed once in his litter box and he doesn't want to use it a second time. So in the cold weather, make sure you clean things like the litter boxes more frequently to make sure that it's always clean for your pet. If you're going to do something about the ice on your paths, it's much better to use grit rather than just plain salt, because plain salt, if an animal has a small cut in its pads, can be very, very painful. Yes, grit can wear their pads down. If you walk them on lots of grit for long periods of time, a little bit of grit on your path should be absolutely fine. And it's better to work that in than to use salt. And if you've got an animal with long hair between his toes, and particularly a dog, and you're intending to walk him across a snowy field, it's useful to cut the hair between the toes, because that can the snow can get caught between the pads and onto the hair on the toes and form like ice balls, and that can make them very, very sore. And needless to say, be careful of frozen lakes and ponds. As I said, we've had a sad reminder of that recently with the children playing on a lake last weekend. So the same goes with your pets. They may be that much lighter, but they could still break through a frozen lake or pond. So keep them away from it. And if you're using antifreeze on anything, so for example, your car, to get it started in the morning, please make sure that you put the antifreeze away somewhere safe. And likewise, don't dose your car with so much antifreeze that it just pulls off and lies on the ground where your pet could lick it up. If some does drip off any reasonable amount, then make sure that you remove it with a cloth, wipe it up, because as I said, it is very toxic. It's very sweet, and although cats can't taste the sweetness, they still seem to be attracted to it. It's the difference between cats and humans. They don't have much sense of sweetness because they're what we call obligate carnivores. They have to eat meat, and sweetness isn't an important quality. And so that's why they're different. They have a different view of the world. They have different senses according to their natural lifestyle. And as I said, meat is not something that we would tend to think of as being sweet. So not surprisingly, they don't have a good sense for that taste. Same way as they see different colors to us as well. So what do we do? If things don't quite go to plan? Well, we have to remember that none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, and it's important not to just blame the pet. There is some fascinating work that has been done on looking at pets and the guilty look. And if you look particularly at the dog in the middle here, this is a sort of classic, what's known as guilty look. And this was not done at Lincoln. This was done by colleagues in the US. And what they did is they looked at how the dogs responded after in an experiment in response to the owner's behavior. So in short, they told owners that they were testing their dog's ability to resist a treat. And they asked the owners to leave the room, and they said they were going to put a treat on the table and see if their dog could resist taking the treat. Now, the neat thing here is what they did is they did the same for all of the dogs. All the dogs were given the treat, but the owners were given different information. Some of the owners were told, your dog did really well. He resisted the treat. Other owners were told, as soon as we put the treat down, he just nicked it. He ate it straight away. As I said, all the dogs did exactly the same thing. However, the owners have been given different information, and when they came back having been told, then those owners who had been told that their dog had not been able to resist the treat were much more likely to show the guilty look. As I said, it's not because the dogs had done anything different, it was because the person's body language had changed. They were perhaps either embarrassed or annoyed with their dog for failing the test, and if they spoke to the dog, their tone of voice could give cues, but just their body language started to signal this is not right. And this gesture of a dog is actually a way of saying, I don't want to get a dispute. I don't want any harm. But if you go up to a dog that is showing this sort of look and you punish him, then actually you're making matters worse. He's right to show that. He's trying to break it off. And worse could happen in this sort of situation. If you don't read your pet's body language well, then he said, well, I'm trying to make peace with you and you don't understand that. And his only other option then is to perhaps growl or snap or worse, to bite you in order to get you to back off. And this is not an uncommon situation that we might see in our clinic as well, people misreading the body language. We don't know whether or not dogs can feel guilty, but often what we interpret as the guilty look is our own body language and the dog's responding to that. We've not really got any evidence that dogs can feel guilty about having done something wrong. So let's just remember that, as I said, we can all make mistakes and let's learn from it. If you left something out and your dog went and trashed it, that's your fault, not the dog's perhaps. And just be grateful that he hasn't harmed himself. If you're interested in this, together with my colleague at the University of Lincoln, Helen Zulch, we've published a little book looking at some of this, trying to help people view things from their pet's perspective. It's called Helping Minds Meet. And perhaps that can be your New Year's resolution, is to try and build a happier and healthier relationship with your pet. And I've got here 8 tips from that book that I'm going to quickly go through now. First of all, is appreciate we have different ideas. You and your dog or your cat or your parrot, you see the world differently. Therefore, there should be limits to what we expect from one another. We shouldn't expect an animal to be well behaved every minute if we're not well behaved every minute. So why should we expect our pets to be? So we need to be forgiving and give them an opportunity to let off steam when it's safe to do so. We all make mistakes from time to time. We don't have to punish for it. We just have to pause and think, what happened in that situation? And as I said, and quite often we have to ask ourselves, what do I learn from this? And that's one of the joys of having pets, is that we're constantly learning from them. As I said, we've got a new cat this year and I've learned so much. And although I've been working in this field for many years, I never cease to be amazed by what I learned from getting a new pet. The fourth thing to appreciate is that we speak different languages. As I've said, dogs in particular are really tuned into human emotion, but they don't rationalize it and they don't think it through in a great way. They respond in a much more reflexive way to what they perceive around them. So, as I gave examples, with example the guilty look, but also how to be a sensitive carer if your dog is scared. It's important to understand these things, and it's the sort of research we do here that helps in that situation. And remember, communication is a two-way process. That's one of the big advantages of something like the Safe Haven. It allows the pet to say to us, you know what, I want some space to myself away from you. And that's absolutely fine. You sometimes perhaps want space away from your pet. So, don't force them to be with you if they don't want to be. And recognize and learn to read their body language so you can see what is going on. And in general, life is better if we can both learn to think before we act. We might be very impulsive. And one of the things that we've developed at Lincoln, a number of protocols to try and reduce impulsivity in pets, is teaching them self-control. And then they tend to make better decisions. Animals want the easy life that they can get, sharing it with their human. Likewise, ourselves, we need to not be too impulsive around our pets and think through, is that a good thing from our pet? From our pet's perspective, how would they feel about it? Not just think that they're little people. So, and we also both function better when we're less stressed. Christmas can be a great time, but it can also be a stress time. And don't be surprised if your pet picks up on changes in your stress levels as well. Your sweat changes and they can detect things like that just from sweat, quite apart from all the changes in behavior. So give each other a little bit more room if needs be. One thing we can always do for a pet is to make sure that they've got that little bit more time to process things. And remember, there are lots of ways we can enjoy ourselves together, lots of new opportunities. So do look around for those opportunities, but make sure, especially with social media, that they are going to be good for your pet. I'll give you an example. In the case of cats, a lot of people like playing with laser toys with cats. We actually think that that increases frustration because there's never something physical for the cat to catch at the end of it. So whilst the cat might jump all over the place, we found that they also show signs of frustration unless you give them a physical toy at the end. So I'm not saying don't use laser toys, but if you do use a laser toy, make sure that you've got a little toy mouse or something to throw in for the cat to pounce and chew on at the end, and that allows it to reset. These are important things for their well-being as well, because just because something interacts with it, that doesn't mean that it's enjoying it. If somebody wrote me a really bad essay, I might feel like I want to screw it up. That doesn't mean I'm enjoying it. But anyway, so there's lots of things to be wary of. So thank you for your attention. And I'd like to apologize to anybody who sent me pictures and I haven't included them in this talk. As I said, I really appreciated seeing them all. And if you'd like to sign your pets up to get involved in the sort of research we do here, then the link is there. So thanks for your attention, and I wish you a great Christmas. Thanks a lot. I'm not sure if there's any questions. I can quickly look at the chat. What sort of activity do you suggest to decrease impulsivity? The key thing is with impulse exercises is to make sure that the animal learns to control itself. If you're constantly giving instructions to your pet to do something, then they don't learn self-control. They just learn to listen to you. So in those situations, we teach the animal that its own behavior. So we don't ask it to settle before the door. But if we're going for a walk, for example, we might just wait until they've settled before we open the door. Don't just let them barge through. And you look at a range of situations like that. So before you get out of the car, waiting for food and factors like that, these all help to teach self-control in those situations rather than waiting to be told to sit. Are there any other questions there? I just think I think that's all of the questions. So thank you. Question about dogs being yappy. Yes, some dogs are. Some dogs, Basenjis, don't bark. The key to understanding why they're being yappy is the key to the solution. So there's not one solution that solves it for all of them. And that's actually, you know, we have a master's program here where we teach people how, you know, to evaluate the behaviors, because a dog may yap because it's excited in a positive way, or because it's scared, or because it's frustrated. And we really need to identify what the underlying emotional state is, and make sure that we manage it in that situation accordingly. So there's no simple solution to that, but it does vary between breeds, absolutely. But we shouldn't think that breed dictates. So the work that has been done on looking at how breed affects behavior. Breed is a very, very poor predictor of behavior. Yes, there are behavior tendencies, but there's enormous variability within a breed. So it's generally, as I said, not wise to sort of link behaviors directly to a breed. Okay. I'm not sure if I meant to end the broadcast or whether somebody else does it for me. I can click on end broadcast now, but